The desert sun bore down on me as I rode through the arid plains of the Old West, the dust swirling around me like a ghostly dance. My name is Henry, and my faithful horse is Belle. She had been with me through thick and thin. I reckoned I'd seen almost everything this unforgiving land had to offer. I finished my morning chores today, and Belle and I were just outside town. This scorching afternoon, I followed a dry creek bed searching for water. I decided to turn back to town when I spotted something peculiar in the distance. An explosion and a blue flash of light appeared in the sky. Falling from heaven, I see a shimmering object from the distance. The thing is gleaming like a nugget of gold in the harsh sunlight. I spurred Belle forward. As I drew closer, I squinted and my jaw dropped. It was a contraption like none I'd ever seen before. It stood a foot tall and had a strange glowing gray surface. It looked like a metal tin, yet very different. I had never seen anything like it as I slowly approached it with caution. The object looked like a part of something larger, and I wondered if the rest of the sky wagon was somewhere else. I was in awe when I saw smoke swirling around it. I immediately knew this object was not from this earth. It flickered with all sorts of strange symbols on its surface. What incarnation is this thing? I dismounted and approached the contraption. It seemed to be unworldly. I couldn't tear my eyes away. Slowly, I touched it, knowing my gloved hand would protect my skin. The object came from the stars. I scratched my chin, trying to wrap my head around it all. Well, ain't that something? I took my glove off and carefully touched it with my bare hands. I shook my head in amazement. This is incredible. It's like magic. There is nothing on this god-green earth like this anywhere. Now, I must find a way to hide it from everyone. I wrapped my travel blanket and tied it to my saddlebag. I knew I had to be cautious when I entered the town's limits. I have a reputation in town for being a troublemaker. Nothing serious, just occasional public drunkenness and some illegal gambling. Thirsty from the day's adventure, I decided to stop by the local saloon for a drink before heading home. I planned to leave quickly, so I immediately went to the bar and ordered a drink. That's when I felt a hand fall on my shoulder, and I turned to see a tall, broad-shouldered man with a badge. The man behind me happens to be Sheriff O'Malley. "Mornin', Sheriff," I greeted, tipping my hat respectfully. Sheriff O'Malley didn't return the nod. Instead, he fixed his cold eyes on me. "Henry, are you staying out of trouble? Because it just so happens that when I saw you tie your horse to the hitching post, there seemed to be something you were hiding. Do you know anything about stolen goods in town?" The sheriff was referring to Old Man Carson, who owns the town store, and he complained of theft last month. I know the sheriff doesn't believe I'm guilty of robbery, but this is his way of leaning into me to see if I know anything about it. I kept my expression neutral, hiding the unease I felt. "I don't know anything you're talking about, Sheriff." His gaze remained unrelenting. "Is that so? Then you wouldn't mind showing me what you're hiding on your saddle outside." My heart sank as I knew he would find what I had carefully hidden from everyone. Walking past the saloon's swinging door, Sheriff O'Malley asked me to show him what was underneath the blanket. I slowly lifted the veil, exposing the strange metal. I saw the sheriff draw his revolver as he yelled, "Henry, stop right there," he ordered with authority. I raised both my hands in the air and immediately in a panic. "Sheriff, it's safe. I didn't steal this. It just fell from the sky." He instructed me to take a step back as he looked at the object with confusion. By this time, a small crowd was watching this unfold. I could see the onlookers, all with that look of confusion. I could hear them gasp as Sheriff O'Malley grabbed the object with amazement. The sheriff instructed the crowd to calm down and look directly at me. "Henry, I'm taking you to jail to explain all this." I didn't even argue because, in these parts, Sheriff O'Malley has a lot of power. Besides, I didn't break any laws, and it won't be long before I'm released. When I arrived at the sheriff's office, He confiscated my revolver and threw me into a jail cell. The sheriff's assistant deputy is my childhood friend, Billy. Sitting in my cell, Billy asked, "What did you do now, Henry? What did O'Malley bring you in for?" The sheriff interjected, "Well, Henry here had this in his possession, and he won't be honest where he got it." The object was carefully placed on the table. The deputy's eyes opened wide as his jaw dropped to the ground. "What in the world is that, Sheriff?" O'Malley pointed to Henry. "Ask your friend over there. He claims it just fell from the heavens." For the next hour, both men took turns asking me questions about where I found that unusual metal object. Never wavering, I explained that something appeared falling from the sky, where I eventually saw it by the creek's edge. Sheriff O'Malley looked at me square at the eyes. "Henry, I'm not buying your story. We will continue this talk tomorrow." The sheriff abruptly left, taking the unusual metal object home with him. Deputy Billy explained the sheriff had to go home to watch over his elderly mother, who was sick. I looked at Billy and asked if I could leave. The deputy replied, 24 hours, Henry. We will release you." He turned his back and walked away. After spending the night in a holding cell, I woke to the sheriff yelling. He was red-faced and informed Billy that his mother had died in the middle of the night. Her unexpected death made the sheriff believe she died because of the strange object I found. "It's all your fault, Henry. That thing you were carrying is cursed, and it killed my mother. I'm keeping you in jail until you tell us the truth." Sheriff replied with anger. At that moment, Deputy Billy grabbed the sheriff to talk to him privately. After their private conversation, Billy walked up to my cell and whispered, "Henry, sorry we must keep you here. I can't let you go. O'Malley believes that thing you were carrying got his mother killed." Word around town spread like wildfire that the object I found killed the sheriff's mother. Panic set in, and it wasn't long before the folks met about the strange object that could threaten everyone in town. Later in the evening, I only had the light on the flickering lantern in my cell. I kept asking myself, how did I get into this trouble? Then I heard the door creak open, and Deputy Billy walked in. He pulled up a chair and sat across from me to update me on my situation. "Henry, we need to keep you here longer. Sheriff O'Malley is sick and at home in bed. It looks like the entire town's struck with influenza." Deputy Billy scratched his head with frustration and explained, "Henry, the people around town want you dead." It began with whispers. Then rumors started to spread like wildfire. "The strange object you brought back to town is why everyone is sick." I professed my innocence and demanded Billy to let me out of jail immediately. Unfortunately, he had to hold me another day because those were Sheriff O'Malley's instructions. My second night in jail felt miserable, but before long, I saw the morning sun peek through the cell bars. Just outside the jail, I hear a large crowd yell, "Hang him now. He brought us the plague." Deputy Billy asked folks to stay calm and reminded the public that this town has a legal process. Billy walked back in and began to pace back and forth. "This is starting to get out of hand. The influenza is running through our town, and they want you to hang for this, Henry. I wish you never brought that damn thing over here." I begged him again to set me free, but he reminded me that we would sort all this out when the sheriff came in tomorrow. Billy was confident that O'Malley would feel better by morning and that he would know what to do with me. Later that day, the deputy would drop off grub for the evening, but I hardly had an appetite. Sunset came quickly, and the crowd was still outside, demanding my execution. I muttered under my voice, "Billy, are they going to hang me for this?" The deputy wiped the sweat from his brow. "I honestly don't know what's going to happen. I've never seen the town this upset. I know we have had several deaths from the flu, and they need someone to blame for this." The following day, Sheriff O'Malley walked in, fighting past the crowd of demonstrators. His face looked pale and sickly. "You look like hell, O'Malley," Deputy Billy remarked. The sheriff looked agitated. "We need to calm the folks outside. The town is outside in a panic. the sheriff shouted. He pulled Billy aside, and they discussed what they would do to me. I can visibly see they were both yelling at each other. Moments later, Billy walks up to me. "I'm sorry, Henry. I couldn't stop it. They're going to hang you tomorrow." This fever is a direct threat to our townspeople. The sheriff won't even give you a trial. The deputy's shoulders slumped down. I pleaded with him that I was innocent as I felt my legs were unsteady. All Deputy Billy could do was apologize, but his hands were tied. Later that night, Billy handed me my last meal. Billy and I had a private conversation as he was giving me information about the day of my execution. First, I could meet with the clergyman and make final statements. Since I had no family, I couldn't say my goodbyes. By noon tomorrow, the sheriff will bring me to the gallows, then walk up the steps to a platform where the noose will be ready. I can give my final statement to the folks in town if I wish. Then, I'll hang until my last breath leaves my body. Billy and I sat silently for a minute, and then I muttered, "You remember when we were just kids, and we would try to look for gold by the creek?" He turned and looked at me. No words were spoken. I still remember our adventures as children. Deputy Billy nodded and walked away. The moon is at full cast on my last night on Earth tonight. I heard the coyotes howling from the distance as I couldn't help reflecting on my life. It was quiet, and all I had was my thoughts. I began to weep uncontrollably as the reality settled that I would die in about 7 hours. Then, suddenly, I heard a loud noise. The door opened, and Deputy Billy came rushing in. He reached the desk, pulled out the jail keys, and unlocked the cell door. He turned to me and said, "Henry, you must leave now. The town folks will be outside at sunrise." Billy quickly escorted me outside. I couldn't believe he was letting me go. I looked my friend in the eye. "I don't know what to say," I replied with gratitude. "Don't say anything. Just get out of here. You know you can never return home, and O'Malley will give someone a big reward for your head." I shook my friend's hand, knowing that was the last time I would see him. The deputy handed me my revolver, and I jumped on my horse and spurred Belle into action. With the wind in my face, I raced out of town when suddenly I heard a voice shout, "Stop, or I'll shoot." Sheriff O'Malley was on his horse right behind me. We raced through the terrain as I heard the sheriff closing in. Shots began to ring out, and bullets tore through the air.
"Jason, look," I screamed, my face pale and my eyes wide with panic. I hovered my fingers above the control panel. Where is it? Where's the computer tablet? One moment, everything was running smoothly, and the time machine was functioning within our planned parameters. But it didn't come back.
I immediately knew this object was not from this Earth. It flickered with all sorts of strange symbols on its surface.
It didn't come back? What do you mean it didn't come back? My colleague Jason muttered, barely able to process the words. I could see his mind spinning. The time machine had been flawless in every trial. There was no reason for it to malfunction now, I emphatically explained. Jason frantically typed commands into the terminal. His hands shook, the keys clicking with an urgency that matched the panic creeping up my spine. This doesn't make any sense. The time machine displacement should have been symmetrical. We sent it back. It should return to the same spot. Jason's voice cracked, and I could hear the edge of fear slipping through. "It's gone, Jason. It's gone." He took a few steps toward me, his legs unsteady as the gravity of the situation hit him like a ton of bricks. "We need to call Mr. Anderson and tell him what happened." Jason's face was dismayed as we knew we had to call our boss. Before making the call, Jason asked, "How far have we sent the computer tablet in the past?" I instructed the time machine to take it back only by a month. But who knows, since it never returned. I don't know where and when it went. We both sat in silence, and I thought about the implications of what had just happened. We'd spent years working on this. Years. A working time machine. But now, we had no idea where or even when our tablet ended up. My brain couldn't even compute the scale of what we were talking about. What would that mean if this computer tablet was gone, if it didn't come back? The past, the present, the future, everything was at risk. Could we have altered history? We were left to wonder.